History sadly seems to always be repeating itself. Whether it's nepotism, whether it's corruption, whether it's rivalry, whether it's cleansing, whether it's religious cleansing, racist cleansing, at the end of the day, we seem to see the same issue keep recurring 100 years after 100 years. The sad story is like people never seem to learn. We always hear of one, let's say a nation came and rescued a second nation. But we never hear the stories of what it entailed for those who are caught up as victims. Take a good scenario. Let's say you are a village and the enemy comes to where you are. You can't fight, you're stuck. Your country then claims that you have housed the enemy. Mind you, your enemy has weapons and are literally outnumbered. And then your country or the allied groups push away the enemy out of your environment. And you are thinking some form of relief. I mean, not like you invited the enemy came. Only now for you to find yourself being called um, to be sympathizers of the enemy. And now you move from hope that you've been rescued to now you're next for whatever execution has been planned by either your country or the allied groups, whether it's men, whether it's women, or whether it's children. And that's a very good and sad example to look at, because that's what happens when there's either civil, whether there's either war, direct war, or any form of crisis. There's always the people who get caught up, not knowing what's going on. They don't have the weaponry, they don't have the numbers, they don't have the strategy, they don't have the experience or the expertise. They're just victims. And what does a politician do? After all the bloodshed, after everything is done, let's handshake, let's do a treaty, and let's call bygones bygones. And everyone says, fine, we agree. But we never get to understand the fine print behind these treaties. We never get to understand the language behind it, the shall, the will, the apostrophe, all those things which all make a very big difference. And so you believe everything is gone. A decade's gone. And then out of the blues, a new politician comes and says, you remember what happened in ABCD? That it wasn't signed the way we wanted. We want back everything that was taken. So we are pushing these people away. Now, the people are pushing that time is, let's say, 100 years later. So it's a whole different generation with a few information of what happened in the past. But now, here we go again. Now they're the victims. Now they're told, get out. Where do they run? What do they do? They're caught. And we keep forgetting that that's the reality of war or any ethnic violence. Is that the saddest story is once the atrocities have been committed, there's a moment of silence. People eat, people drink, people dine, people have a good time. And then that wound, that scar is reopened when a new politician comes into power. And that's the saddest part. It's like reliving trauma time and time again. Whether you are taken as a slave and thrown into the enemy's camp, and then you got stuck there, and then you started a life, only enough for the people of that country to say, we don't need you, get out. And they're thinking, where am I going again? I don't even know where I'm from. And that's the saddest thing about life. And it's the most painful thing. Because you ask yourself, when does it ever end? Why the hatred? Look at right now on social media. Don't we have so much hatred? Let's even leave social media. Let's look at news propaganda. Before, information was relayed on one source, a trusted source. Right now, information is moving like wildfire. It doesn't have to be a trusted source. Information is moving. It's up to you to do your due diligence and check if the person who's on the other end is saying what they're saying or they're lying. but the same story keeps happening. And that is the saddest part in life. When you keep repeating the same thing over and over again. And when you look at history, this information you not find it in your school, whether in your high school or in your primary or even in a campus. Right now, you have to do your due diligence. You have to get deep into research. You have to try and trace people who are there before and try and make sure that whatever information you get is not biased information. You have to break down. I know there's other things sometimes if you relate to the most common person, they just look at you and say, so what? It wasn't my problem. And then the same thing that happens. Let's look at right now. Where are we witnessing countries? You're seeing the drums of war. But how is it starting? The seeds have been planted. We are seeing all these people are like that, all these people are like that. How did you arrive at? Media. Either through the news we digest, or the entertainment industry, or even the music. In that, in whatever what you are watching or listening to, it gives you a biased understanding or a stereotype about a community or about a nation. That's not really what it is. And the sad story is people buy in. And once people buy in, because many people don't want to do their due diligence, next thing you know, they act on it. Let's look at even nowadays the span of someone reading or anything on social. How many seconds do people, I mean, for 3 seconds, very short span, and you move. So most people right now, they want to move on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next. Like dating, swipe left, swipe right on the apps. And sometimes I get it very sad when I think about, because you're thinking, if you're always going to be swiping and swiping and swiping, you'll just assume if you find the next person, you'll just swipe them out. But is that how life works? Nope. The thing is, we always need to be very careful never to repeat history, because all these nations and communities, they all have a history, and sadly their history is very dark. The thing is not rejecting what happened in history, is making sure it doesn't repeat itself, learning from the mistakes that were done before, correcting those mistakes, and being able to sit at the table, dine, without having to turn on each other. The same energy we used to hate, the same energy we used to attack one another, we can use to do something great. Let's look at bullying, for example. The one who gets bullied, whichever way of bullying has happened to that victim, what happens to their emotions? What happens? Some are bullied to the point they end up in hospital, like physically harmed. Others, they even move to the point of overdose on medication. And so you ask yourself, when does it all end? And so the bully was a victim. Nobody gets to hear, we never get to hear the story of the victims of bullies. No. We hear the bullies. We hear, oh, they continue, they went, oh, they changed their ways. What about the victim? What about the one whose lunchbox was taken away, or whose pet was hurt, or who was physically harmed to a point of even ending up in an ICU HDU? We never get to hear the story of the victim. What about when you see all these types of crime? Where does the camera and the lens and the reporting go to? We always hear about the perpetrators. Nobody talks about the victim. What about the one who didn't choose to be in that environment, or who was naive to trust someone? You don't get to hear the story. And so what happens? You silence the victim until the victim becomes the monster. Then people start saying, wait a minute. Is this not the victim? But they realize it's already too late. The thing is, if you keep repeating, if you keep hurting one another and doing the same thing, when you're going to create a society of monsters. And then when that happens, who wins? Nobody. When you look at all these wars and all these cleanses, what's the one thing you realize? History is always rubbed off. Why? Because whoever controls history controls the masses. Whoever has control of the history controls the future. And that's the chess and the checkers in this life that we live in. So don't be the one a victim. Take your time. Do your research. Understand where you are, whether it's your country, whether it's nations. Do your due diligence. Don't believe everything you hear. Take your time. Research. Dig. Now, once you have the information, do something positive with it. You don't need to keep repeating the same history cycle, because at the end of the day, when you all go to war, it's the politician who sits at the top and you are the victims. Don't be another victim. Change the story. make history better.